regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. So bang the gavel. There we go. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've been cycling. All right. Could we please take the roll call?
Commissioner Manny,
Present.
Commissioner Gasco,
Present.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Here.
Commissioner Stocklus,
Here.
Commissioner Martinez, Commissioner Gatto, Commissioner Merrick, and Acting Chair Hamilton.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Okay. Are there any communications?
No, Chairman Gray couldn't make it, so Commissioner Hamilton has stepped forward to chair this meeting, so thank you.
Very good. My pleasure. Okay, let's move to approval of, move on to approval of the minutes of the last meeting.
Approve, or motion? Second.
Okay, that's a motion by Commissioner Stocklus, seconded by Commissioner Sepisi.
Close enough.
Did I get them backwards?
You did.
Nope, you're
It's all good.
Roll call on the motion. Commissioner Gasco,
Present, or yes.
Commissioner Sepisi,
Yes.
Commissioner Stocklus,
Yes.
Commissioner Manny,
I'm sorry?
for the minutes,
To approve the minutes.
Oh,
Approve the
yeah.
minutes. and Acting Chair Hamilton.
Yes,
Minutes are approved.
very good.
Okay.
Right, now it's time to move on to the item. Tonight's a workshop, so there will not be any swearing in. It's really for information. So, Lori, I think you're going to lead on this part?
Mhm. Yep, so this is a workshop for what is being called the Interstate Sports Dome, located at 7600 191st Street. Request is for special use to establish a PUD, along with other entitlements, rezoning, annexation, final plat, site plan, and architectural approval. So that address is a flag-shaped type of property that's located on the north side of 191st Street between Panduit Drive and 76th Avenue. So this is all east of 80th Avenue. So on the upper right, you can see the outline of it. It is mostly flag-shaped except for a notch at the southern part of the property. So that is separately owned property, also not incorporated in the village. It is not part of the subject property. So aside from that notch, which is about 250 by a little over that rectangle, this property is contiguous. The east side of it runs along 76th Avenue, the west side along Panduit Drive. Panduit Corporation is just northwest of the property. So this property, as far as its history, it was annexed into the village in 1992. It's a large 48-acre property. It's mostly vacant now. The history of its use, it was right after its annexation, operated as the Greystone Golf Course, 9-hole golf course that closed in 2012. There was a short special use permit allowed for agriculture at that time, which had since expired. But now, as I said, it's mostly vacant. There's a old parking lot that faces 191st, but for the most part, vacant land. As far as its zoning, it's in the ORI zoning district. So what's around it and how is that zoned? To the north is the detention for Panduit Corporation. So that's the missing piece of what would be that flag. So north and west. And then, of course, entirely north of the property is I-80. So Panduit is its own PUD. Its underlying zoning is ORI. To the east is Brookside Marketplace, along with some village-owned vacant land as part of that PUD. Their underlying zoning is B3. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with the large amount of retail there, Target, Kohl's, Dick's Sporting Goods, et cetera. To the south of 191st is the fire station that's zoned R2, Brookslide Glens PUD, which underlying is B3. That chunk of land is vacant, so that's southeast of 191st and 80th. And then, as I mentioned before, technically south of that property and within this notched area of the subject property is this unincorporated part of land, not part of this proposal. That is multi-structure, commercial, residential type of blend of use that appears to have some vehicle storage out there. So to the west of all of this is south of the Panduit is ORI zoning district as well. That's vacant land. So again, that's east of 80th, north of 191st. On the image on the left, you can see like the center image, the left part of that shows like what that golf course used to look like. So there is some residual from when that golf course was around. But for the most part, as I said, it's vacant. There's some unique site constraints. The Buckeye Pipeline runs through the site. There's Union Ditch at the northwest part of the site. There's some flood zone at the north. Petitioner has spoken with our village engineering and has worked with us to best understand things like base flood elevation and such, and these other site constraints. So preliminary engineering has been looking to address these things. 76th Avenue is what we would consider an unimproved type of condition of a roadway, and other conditions include there's a temporary traffic signal at Panduit and 191st. This relates to a previous intergovernmental agreement when Panduit developed. They had referenced that as part of that phasing, any additional improvements would trigger, any additional development would trigger additional improvements. So these are constraints that relate to the petitioner working with Will County, which they've already begun to do. So as far as the proposed use, so this is proposed as a multi-phase commercial sports complex development with retail and dining. This depends on future lot development. What the petitioner wishes to do is get zoning entitlement set for these and get started on phase one. So phase one would be a large 142,500 square foot dome and a support building attached to the east side of it, and along with some site improvements. So as part of this preliminary engineering, they'd be doing design engineering for detention, water mains, other utilities, et cetera, to service the entire 48-acre property. Phase two would ideally bring in a second smaller dome of 30,000 square feet and complete the rest of the remaining site improvements. So roadways and such would be developed as future lots would come in. So we also noted things like making the traffic signal permanent, road improvements to 76th Avenue. So these are things that we may wish to discuss, but ultimately at this point, it's the phase one, it's the dome that they're looking to develop. So as far as the use of the dome, so it's identified in the narrative as an indoor sports facility. They don't peg out the specific sports type, but they have stated to staff before that this would be anticipated as a baseball training facility. So they did provide some spec drawings from the Farley Group in the packet. There's a floor plan in there that shows a way of laying out 2 baseball fields and half a dozen batting cages. It does also mention divider curtains, which could increase the intensity of use, right? If you start to break out the space, multiple activities could start to fill it up. The petitioner in previous staff review did say that they will not have divider curtains. So we may wish to have some confirmation on that. As far as the hours and the number of people, the submittal identified Monday through Thursday, pretty long hours, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then Friday through Sunday, more limited, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. 200 patrons on weekdays, and a range of 250 to 350 on weekends. They did mention in the narrative that they would anticipate to facilitate regional tournaments and events, but they haven't provided any details on what uptick in number of people and any possible adjustment of hours that would entail. They did not identify if there would be any type of assembly use gatherings outside of it being for sports. So that is the dome itself. Next to the dome is the support building, which would also come in with phase one. And that is simply the support services, registration, et cetera, offices for the dome, and then end caps as a physical therapy, kinesiologist office, and a restaurant. As far as other uses, looking bigger for the whole 48-acre development, behind the dome to the west of the large dome, they would anticipate in that phase two to have a 40 to 50,000 square foot large commercial big box development. So that could be something like a cinema or a sporting goods PGA type of store, et cetera. As far as the other lots, they'd be smaller retail, they'd be fast food type of dining establishments. So I've got open items here, just like the staff report. So this would be to discuss use type and intensity of events, and if any use type restrictions should be considered, and to confirm no dividers. So the uses spelled out, my apologies if the slide cut off some of the text here, but it's for creating the PUD. The PUD would in itself have a final plat that would be just to get phase one going, and then the PUD would have a preliminary plat of breakdown of lots. There would also be the final plat of the first phase. So two plats, phase one and phase two, preliminary and final. And then annexation, there is a small 10-foot by 250-foot strip of land that runs on the east side of that separately owned unincorporated property. So this little strip of land would need to be annexed in. And then rezoning, so to get this type of use to work, B3 would be the use that would be appropriate for that. And then of course site plan architecture approval. So when we look at a PUD, we try to identify the vision and the goals, and to see if there's any additional allowances or restrictions that would differ from the standards of the zoning code. So this would be like a PUD is like a unique zoning code for that certain development. So some of the exceptions that we've identified, and this is not necessarily inclusive of everything, but ones that we like to call out so you can help understand the flexibility of the PUD, I have up on screen. So I'll run through them now, and I may not hit on them later, but this is just the itemized list. So we'd have, as phase one, that would be one lot, right? So you would have multiple principal structures. There would be front yard parking. The zoning district is also, if I didn't mention before, it's our village has everything south of 179th is also on top of that ORI zoning district. It's also the Urban Design Overlay District, what we also call the UD1 or UDOT. So there's restrictions in the zoning code for that. So some of them include maximum setbacks. So there's some exceptions, there's some relief that's built in for this proposal on the UD1 setbacks. I have placed on here screening for mechanical pads and truck loading, so that may be something we may want to talk about if that should still be an exception or not, because typically if there's anything in public view, we would want to see it covered. So number of curb cuts, max is 1 for the urban design overlay. Maximum building height, the dome will be 75 feet tall. masonry requirements, they don't meet the minimums. Alternate building materials to the sports support building, and storefront elevation transparency. So that's a unique provision in the UD zoning code as well. So all that said, the rezoning, annexation, vacation of 76th Avenue, the plats, all of this is part of this request tonight. So as far as the site plan, as in the staff report, I've got this shown up on the screen with staff markups in the green and pink. So you can see on the east side is 76th Avenue. The lot is shown going partially into 76th Avenue, so that may be something we would like to see the petitioner revise or clean up to include all of it. The request for 76th Avenue is to vacate it so all of 76th Avenue would be under their private ownership. The pipeline, you can see, is the diagonal that runs through the northeast part of the property. The phase 1 identifies the small dome up at the top as having a gravel base footprint. Staff typically would not like to see something like that because that may encourage prohibited parking and such, so changing that to a type of grass landscaping, staff would recommend that to happen. The large dome, as you can see, is south of the smaller dome. There is access that's on the northwest part of the dome. That would be the service to the dome, and that is brought in on Panduit Drive. So Panduit is binding on the west. You see I have 4 arrows, so those show the access points into the site. The plans do show proposed lot 2, but staff has requested for this phase 1 to make everything as one lot. The only improvements to that would be making that curb cut and having a large amount of pavement to help service the truck loading and vehicles going into the site there. So a truck turn analysis was not provided for that point of entry. That's something that staff would like to see to get a feel for how much of that pavement is really needed. Also, the village fire department identified that they would want to see fire truck auto turn at that north drive aisle. So that's been noted in green on the site plan. As far as the dome itself, they provided a spec package from the Farley Group, and that called out some more details so that are not shown in the site plan. The biggest of which is mechanical pad units. So this is the primary heater, the backup generator, the inflator, the air recirculators. So these are several pads that will be required. The petitioner identified that the heater and the generator will, which are substantially large pads, will be on the west side, so likely south of where that truck parking is shown. The remaining mechanicals they identified would be on the north. So we want to have a confirmation to see that a fire truck can still turn with these pads being shown. But these drawings, even though they're not, these dome spec drawings, even though they're not site specific, they help us get an idea of actually what the footprint of the construction would be. As far as the screening for some of these mechanicals, they identified that they would not anticipate screening the ones on the north, which is okay. It's not public facing view. There's floodplain directly to the north of that, so that is not an issue. The screening to the west, we would want to see that. They've identified they would do landscape screening for those mechanical pads, the largest pad of which is over 900 square feet. So, having something that covers around that, it could be landscaping or fencing or something to that nature. We would just like to see that. And truck loading as well. So as a phase 1, that would just be straight visible out to Panduit Drive. So we'd like to see that screened as well. So those are noted as an exception. This is the plan for preliminary engineering for the whole 48 acres. So the north part of the flag is cut off, but the substantial part of what we're talking about is visible on the screen. So west access for phase 1 would be those 2 green arrows. Then in phase 2, they would add in a third private drive access. So going from north to south on the west, phase 1 is this truck loading service. And then below that would be south of the dome, connecting Panduit to 76th would be a 40-foot ingress egress. And then this phase 2 would bring in this additional third access point. That would be a 50-foot private drive. And then it would have a T accessing on 191st. So that would be accessing 191st from those 3 points, 76th, 191st, and Panduit Drive. They've provided some phasing information with sidewalks. Staff would like to see the sidewalks, for public health and urban design overlay district standards. We would like to see the sidewalks implemented to not just be perimeter, but within the site as well. So that is another consideration. And then the road improvements, as I mentioned before, there's a temporary traffic signal at Panduit Drive. 76th Avenue is unimproved. Will County is going through improvements right now on 191st. So that poses some challenges with working with county jurisdiction, but the petitioner, as we said, is working with them on that. The draft traffic study was also included in the packet as well. So as far as open items, I won't read through them all, but they're up on screen. That basically talks about the site plan considerations. And then as far as plats, so we have final plat phase 1 to get the dome and its supporting building started. We have a preliminary plat that would be phase 2 that would have, I believe it's 10 lots. And then there would be a plat of vacation and a plat of annexation. So the plat on the left is what they've submitted for phase 1, but that is showing outlots for drainage. So we would like to see that all as one lot with easements for drainage. And then as far as the second phase, that does still have that, that could be allowed at that point when, the development is broken down. But the commission may wish to discuss some of the configuration of the lots. It would be dependent on the development of future properties coming in. But one unique shape is the lot 10, which is an upside down U shape, 10 feet wide, that surrounds that annexed property. So we'd want to consider discussing all of these things. Open item. And then landscaping. So there's the pipeline that runs through, you see in blue. From Village's experience, we can't speak on behalf of Buckeye Pipeline, but they typically don't allow anything to be built on the path of the pipeline. So we've kind of sketched in where we believe that extent of the path could be, as far as how wide and what that could affect. We think it may affect 3 landscaping islands. So these curved landscape beds, if they can't happen, we'd like to see at least we'd like to see ideally the shrubs to try to remain there, but the trees, anything that can't happen there, we'd like to see relocated. And then that leads a question, open item, if there's any other places for landscaping should be added or potentially displaced, or a location to put potentially displaced trees. They could place them on the north of the domes. It's one possible idea. This is a second image we had for landscaping plan. We think that, I believe it was potentially 12, we'd like to see 12 trees.
It was an approximation.
Approximation. Sorry. So there's just a minor deficiency on the front of the support building. So we just identified that in green. Commission may wish to discuss that. Next is architecture. So the building is a little over 18,000 square feet. The dome is over 142,000 square feet, a 75-foot tall dome. The materials versus the code, this doesn't directly comply with code. So I'll explain the code first. So I think I have some right here. So code require, and this is about the support building. So code requires 75% face brick with options of 25% of it possibly being decorative stone. Alternate building materials, and there's a list in the code and in the staff report, can be provided up to 15%. This is for buildings that are 3,000 to 40,000 square feet. Once you get over 80,000, the face brick requirement reduces to a minimum of 25%. The code also states that CMU and cinder block are not permitted exteriors. Again, this is a PUD, so there can be some flexibility. The petitioner did provide a material percentages chart, but when staff looked at the way the numbers break down, it appears that in what we see for the elevations, it looks like they may have included glazing, so they may wish to double check those numbers. So again, this is the main view where you see the support building. The east side is where all the public patron entries would be from. So the image is cut off a little, but the building is 2 end caps. So what you see is the main entrance that's in the middle of the building. As far as the type of materials they've proposed, that is mostly precast concrete panels. Now, some of this does have, on the support building, some of it does have masonry. That would be spec'd as face brick over precast concrete and split face concrete block over precast concrete panels. That's at the base of the building. As far as the colors, they're using gray, blue, charcoal tones. So the dome itself is just simply polyester. So again, these are exceptions to the code. And then as far as, I don't have a note in here, but as far as trash enclosures, zoning code also requires trash enclosures have a masonry wall that's consistent with the building's architecture. They spec'd that out as a split face concrete block with a limestone cap and cedar gates. As far as the color tones, looking at the village larger and adjacent thoughts of design and tone, this, first off, this development is its own PUD, but when we look at the adjacent Brookside Glen, images from the staff report are up here too. They're more natural, kind of reddish tones, and this is what we typically see most of in the village. So commission may wish to discuss that, is that this first development for this PUD would set the tone for the rest of the PUD. Signage, that's quick and easy. None has been provided. They know that it's got to meet code. If it doesn't, then they will have to come back for substantial deviation. We expect the traffic signage to be designed per the MUTCD standards. The front elevation did show some pre-finished metal corrugated wall panels that look like they're over some entries, but those don't have any reference for signage or dimensions. And then as far as parking, so this is our last open item that we have. The parking is Pretty straightforward for dining and retail and medical offices. Uses that, however, are not specifically mentioned in the zoning code, such as an indoor recreational facility, which the dome would be, that is designated by the Plan Commission. So we have noted in the report that, you know, we feel it would be advisable to have the petitioner provide some sort of proof that these parking fields will be sufficient to what they anticipate. So that could be examples of other sports domes of a similar size and how much they're yielding, and just to make sure that gels with their expectations of up to 350 people on weekends. The proposal itself, as far as employees and seat counts, there's not much information. Plans just say 20 employees. The big picture, though, is that main parking field, which is east of the support building, and there's a part of that is like 36 stalls that's north of the large dome. That all together, total spaces is 370. There would be lots 3 and 4 south of the dome. So they haven't provided specific numbers for that, but that was kind of roughly sketched in on the plans. So the petitioner stated that any overflow could park in those fields. I do want to note that the Urban Design Overlay District does encourage shared parking. So we would just need to see that that is, these parking fields for lots 3 and 4 and the main dome are sufficient. We'd also like to get verification on what those 36 spaces north of the dome are going to be for, because, you know, we would anticipate it to be employees. There's no good access point to get them to the front of the building, to the support building from there. So we asked to discuss if this all looks sufficient. And last is lighting. No open items there. They provided site lighting, architectural lighting, just basic black wall sconces, and all appear to meet code. No uplighting is proposed. The 9 items are up on the screen. I have the petitioner, Dan Gutierrez, and the representative who's assisting with this project, Vernon Development, Mary Lynn Fleck, are here in the audience.
Good, welcome. So are there any questions or comments?
So you could either have them if they had anything they wanted to add to give any flavor or context, or then
Okay.
each of you could
Excellent.
provide comments or questions if you have.
Okay.
That's how I'd do it.
Yeah, if there's, especially if there's any open items or anything in the staff report, I said, well, you may want to revise, that's something that's fairly straightforward, that you could try to head off any additional questions. You're welcome to speak now, and I ask you just come to the podium so the audio can catch it.
I will say that you did a great job, but there are a couple things that I just want to touch base on.
Sure.
As far as the revised ground material for the footprint area in the future, for the future dome, we're not exactly sure why that red gravel absolutely will be grass. That's definitely what we had intended. I don't have the questions anymore, of course, but I'm just trying to think. As far as adding additional landscaping, if we have to remove any due to the pipeline, we have absolutely no issue. Our thoughts were kind of filling in on that western portion, separating lots 1 and 2 a little bit. And also where you show that sidewalk on the south side of the egress-ingress area, we do intend on putting that sidewalk back. So we definitely can add a tree or 2 there, along with that north side of the parking for the dome itself. So definitely can make up for landscaping. As far as screening, we do have to have at least a 15-foot minimum around the dome of something asphalt, you know, just so that they can get snow removal throughout and anything that's falling off the dome itself. So we can't screen right on top of it like you might see when we're at different businesses, buildings, anything in Tinley, but we definitely can come out in front of that. Definitely something that we will do our best to screen. As far as the truck docking area, and I think Dan can agree with this, it's not necessarily like a truck docking area. So what will happen is the truck will pull in, a door will open, the truck will go into the building, that will shut, and then the airlock will open from the inside of the dome. So you're really not going to see trucks anytime. So that is a big part as well. Again, do I think that we can work on some landscaping in there? Absolutely, something just to screen that a little bit. As far as the large asphalt area goes, when you're heading east from Panduit Drive, we agree that that was excessive. You had that highlighted, it was in, I think,
Like a reddish.
yeah, in that reddish color there. We agree that that was excessive, definitely. Of course, we can provide like a truck turning area there, but Steve and I both thought that that was a bit over the top, so definitely we can narrow that up. I think you did a pretty good job on everything else. I'm just trying to think anything else we might add.
The one thing that I would add is the separation of the dome. So on the inside of the dome, the idea is that there will be removable curtains. So it would be a netting post, you would put them up as, so if separate organizations rented 3 separate spaces, we would have dividers in the 2 for the ability to run 3 separate, practices or workouts or what have you in there. Other than that, that was the one thing that I did pick up.
Okay, yeah. Having that, if it's a way to note that in the narrative, or if there's a sketch. or
Absolutely,
anything.
and I have on our, do you have that, CAD? So I do have it separated as far as how we're gonna execute that. It's going to be, obviously some structural work there, but yeah, I can certainly point that out in the dome itself. But other than that, yeah, like I said, you did a nice job, pretty much.
Absolutely, you know this project.
Yeah, you know pretty well right now.
Yeah.
I'd like to just say, I think our biggest input, because obviously since it's a workshop, we want input from the Plan Commission, so it goes smoothly at public hearing. Probably the largest open items that I would like everyone's feedback on is one, parking. Do you feel it's sufficient? Do you want more data? Do you, they obviously in future phases have parking to the south that they could utilize as well. Considering we don't know, we know what they have already in terms of like, they're expecting several hundred people on the weekends, but if an event is held or things like that, they're gonna be required to handle parking on site. So just your ideas and thoughts on, about that. Second, was since they're gonna be asking for a landscape waiver from you, so you get to decide parking, so I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that. Plan Commission also decides landscaping, so we kind of have this idea of, we're not sure what Buckeye's going to say. We're pretty good with the landscape plan they provided. The issue will come if Buckeye comes and says you can't plant trees on top of our pipeline. That's just not going to work. So we wanted a contingency, maybe a secondary plan to be shown that's gonna say, hey, we're gonna add trees here, here, and here. We're gonna try and keep the shrubs. Oh, they won't let us plant shrubs either. We'll plant these with grass and we're gonna replace those elsewhere. So just wanna get your opinion on that. And then finally, the architecture, again, because it's a PUD, there can be an exception made. I would just like everyone's input on color scheme, whether it fits in with Tinley, if the amount of masonry is appropriate. Just those kinds of comments are probably the 3 biggest we're looking from, and then the 3 you guys really approve the most. So.
Okay, let's, I guess we're just open for discussion. We don't have to go one at a time.
Nope.
All right.
How many parking spots are gonna be in the whole project?
So 370 would be for the sports dome parking. So that vast majority of the 370 is east of the support building. 36 of those spaces are northwest of the large dome.
So I know the complex on 159th Street going towards Lockport, that lot is totally filled at certain times when they're having stuff there. So is 300 gonna be enough?
That's one of the open item questions that we have.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
So the idea is that most of the time inside the dome will be rented out by sports programs, soccer, baseball, what have you. Generally, we're using it for training and not competition. There will be times there is competition, but that number will be drastically reduced because there's only the opportunity to use 2 fields. So generally, probably 6 out of the 7 days of the week, it will be parents come, drop off. There really isn't spectators too much, as it's not really, the idea isn't really, there will be competition, of course, but the numbers won't be there on a regular basis.
Even with tournaments happening?
So the limited amount of fields that there are in there, there's only 2. So tournaments there could only be 24 players per team, give or take. So you're looking at, 100 people. Now, if there are 17 cages there, we took into account 3 people per cage, an instructor, a parent, and a player. We took that into account, and then basically took to where if we had teams on, say, all of the pieces in there, and that's where we came up with that number.
Those spaces, do those include, I noticed that there was gonna be facilities for dining
Yes.
and retail and stuff. Are those spaces expected to include coverage for those also?
They're kind of encompassing, yes, because a lot of times what the need is now, and particularly now I work out of another dome, is the need for the restaurant, and they're kind of encompassing. Drop your kid off, you're gonna go to Target, you're gonna have a meal, you're gonna hang out, because practice is 2 hours long. So we kind of, especially during the week, it's, I think it said 9 to 8, but more closely, your traffic is gonna be after when school would let out. So it's gonna be majority 5 to 10 will be your traffic. So the idea is that the turnover hourly, due to how the structure of it is, hour on the field, hour in the cage, so there's, flow. The idea is that, those parents, those people dropping the kids off would ideally be on site, whether it's in the concession area, restaurant, what have you, so it's kind of encompassing them.
And will there be provisions for special needs parking, handicap, whatever?
Absolutely, and they'll be correct, yes, there will be. Also, there is, airlock, handicap airlock, that sort of thing as well, for access. 26.
Real quick too, just because he's mentioning it, and we've kind of had this conversation about land use and parking, they've actually created a pretty good sized drop-off lane. So the circulation should come from 76th around. They actually put a pull-in lane because at most other places, like, they don't have those, and then you get stacking up in the drive aisle. So they've actually kind of gone out of their way to add, and I
You mean
forget
like
how
the
many
junior
cars.
Correct,
I forget how many
exactly,
cars you
exactly
have,
like
but
a
it's good
school.
amount. And then I'm assuming, and we haven't even discussed this, the north of the dome, those 30-some spaces, I'm assuming that's employee parking.
Yeah, that'll be employee parking, and
Right.
we'll end up having a man door at the back end. As far as I know, Lori mentioned access to the front of the building, but there will be a man door back.
So employee parking will be separated from actual people using the dome.
Another question, have the pipeline people seen this and have they?
Actually, we're having a hard time getting in touch with the person that was in charge of the pipeline. It was Jana, and it actually is not Jana anymore, so we finally
Oh.
hunted down someone named Mike, so I do owe you that information. We just started our conversation with Mike. We're trying to get something on schedule for him to come out and give us some depths. Obviously, we haven't gotten too far into trees, things like that. We're just trying to get past, obviously, we would have a parking lot. What I can tell you is that Vernon Development, my boss did some office buildings right on 185th, just east of 80th, and we actually have the same pipeline running through. And it's funny, because if you look at our Alta survey, you can literally see that that's exactly how it runs through. We have parking lot all over it. So we have gotten there before. We're pretty positive about it. Obviously, you never know what you're gonna run into, but we do have good hopes on it.
Well, I think they're worried about rip growth.
Of
and
course.
Access to the pipeline.
No,
something, God forbid,
definitely.
to
And
go
trees we
wrong.
can relocate,
So
absolutely.
There should be an adjustment somewhere available there.
Oh, definitely. We can fill in landscaping. Like I said, we can kind of go, actually, where you guys suggested are all great ideas, and we definitely could add some fluff to that west side, especially in the truck docking area between lots 1 and 2.
And baseball is the primary use?
Baseball is more of my background, so that's kind of the basis, and that's the dream. But ultimately, soccer, lacrosse. I have all sorts of groups already, LOIs softball, baseball, soccer, 2 lacrosse. You know, there's, I think, 16 or 17 different organizations, so it's more of a, not running one thing out of there, just providing the village with, you know, obviously, many opportunities to rent.
So I think we've touched on then the parking and the landscape issues. I think that the other issue that was mentioned was architecture. A little bit difficult. Do we have color renderings?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Oh, if you have those handy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to.
There's two for each,
Nice.
or not two for each, but there's two.
So these are provided after we posted the
Yes, I'm
staff
sorry,
report.
Had
They
some
were color
modifications to make.
elevations, and these are color renderings.
Looks a little like that top.
So while you look at those, I can give a little background as well. They originally came in with a fully EFS facade, the original. We told them about our masonry requirements in Tinley Park. You know, while it's a PUD, we understand it's special use. Obviously, you can't put masonry on the dome. But the support structure, you know, they don't have to brick the back or the side that faces utter nothingness. So they've taken a shot at putting some brick veneer on the front, doing some split face on the bottom. They have steel accents. So they took a good effort to try and get some unique features on there. Our biggest question, just as staff, was just the nearby location, kind of Tinley's existing style. These are grays, blues, and blacks, and we have more of those earthy tones. So the question was, is Plan Commission or others going to want to see something more? This is going to establish the PUD. So it's kind of one of those things, is this the kind of style we want to see in that area? And there's really no wrong answer to that, it's just a question.
Yeah, so, you know, if the commissioners have any comments on the color schemes. One thing that was mentioned earlier, as an aside, was the new Topgolf that's coming in, and the color scheme that they are using for that. Would it be more similar to this, or would it be more in keeping with what the village has in other areas?
Topgolf's was definitely unique and very much in the blacks and steels and those kinds of colors. That's also their established brand. They don't exactly do brick Topgolfs. They don't, I mean, they all kind of have their own established aesthetic. That was kind of part of their package. This is a sports dome, you know, this is a different object. So you could keep the style the same, the colors could be different, or if it's something you guys feel is appropriate in the area, then that's good too.
Well, I guess I would ask the petitioners, do you have a particular color scheme that?
We came up, we think this is great.
We think this looks awesome.
We think it looks really good, and I understand of course, the villages, you know, they want to keep everything looking, but, the same, but we really like the way this looks, and I was super happy with the way it turned out.
But you don't necessarily have like a brand scheme that's going. That
No, but it would be, when we picking these colors, we were kind of establishing kind of how that ties into, you know, signage and licensing and the business and the, you know, the things moving forward after approvals. We did have that in our site.
So you had a lot of thought behind it.
Absolutely.
Not a dartboard.
I've been thinking about this for a long time, yes.
No dartboards.
We also think this is a little bit more of a modern feel, you know, bring something a little bit new. I also think that the Panduit building is very modern, even though it's been here for a little bit, but it is extremely modern. This, I do believe, will complement it, and obviously that's just west. Kind of opens up some doors for some different things, so we are big fans. We actually went with this color scheme on our office buildings as well, and I do think it's a new thing.
It's a good look.
There you go.
Would there be anything else that we should be covering?
Those were like the three big ones I saw. They covered some of the other open items.
For parking, does the commission want to see like a breakdown, elaborating on what the petitioner mentioned a moment ago to how he got to that number, as well as the information on tournaments?
How they got to the number of parking spaces that they actually have designed in at this
Right,
point,
the
which was
upwards
300.
of 350 on the weekends?
Well, upwards of 350 over the course of the 14 hours that it's open on the weekend, yes. Basically, we broke it down per section that's rentable, and did basically, if you're soccer, baseball, lacrosse, similar numbers, you're looking at 20 to 25 athletes on each field, corresponding, support whoever, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever's bringing them there. That's the kind of, and then we basically use the cages for training, and basically filled those up, and we took the numbers that way.
Okay. It seems to me the key issue for parking here is probably going to be what your tournament and big event schedule is going to be. And at this point, you're saying that's not really the main idea here.
No, it's not.
Just
And-
practice.
And ultimately, the main idea is to partner with local community programs or, programs throughout the suburbs to where that's their home. They would be coming in nightly, they would have a routine, some of them are already basically claiming a field, like, hey, I want this Monday through Friday. So how they would do their scheduling is it would be overlapping, similar to what I discussed. One group on the field, one group in the cages, one group, and they kind of cycle that way. So no more than 1 hour per group on the field is generally how it goes. So you would have a lot of turnover, in and out, in and out, in and out hourly throughout the night. So you basically have your 5-hour slots, and that number would turn over. Similar as well to the training. Training's based on half-hour or hour time slots. So it's just that flow, every hour you got a new group of people coming out or leaving, and a new group of people coming in.
So your calculations are based upon a normal team size,
Correct.
and then however many support people would be part of that, and you make your calculations from that. Okay. Now,
I'm gonna throw you under the bus real quick. What if this just explodes, just takes off, and you need more parking? Is there any provision in here for you to require more
Yes,
parking?
so ultimately, coming out of phase one, there will be parking in phase two, which is not planned to be far behind phase one. Phase one, we're looking to get the dome up and running because, that is the dream. The other things are great, of course, and we want to develop the lane, of course. The idea, if you look up on your screen now where it says proposed lot, my eyes are getting bad, but the one just to the south of the parking lot there now, there's the thought of, hey, yes, you're right, it explodes, which is great, right? We have that for parking, overflow parking, we can put a parking lot there, and not have that outlot there right away, or put both outlots with the extra parking. Those are options for both.
Cool.
I would rather see more parking than less, because you can always cut back later if you don't need it. But if you need it, I've seen the one on 159th Street going towards Lockport.
Yes.
We've
That-
all.
That was one of our
I do.
biggest discussions.
We've actually talked about probably the parking more than
Oh.
the color scheme.
Absolutely.
We've talked about the parking just because we're both part of, and I've been at this a long time in different facilities and see what that, you've obviously been to a facility, right? So you
The Bo
see
Jackson
that,
Dome.
but currently, like at the Bo Jackson Dome, that does happen. But that is less than half the amount of parking
Okay.
spaces that we have. Actually, it's a
We
third.
have confirmed that.
1/3.
Absolutely. One of
So-
our initial meetings, we counted the spaces just to see what they had there, because we knew that was one of the most frustrating parts.
So I'd just like to jump on too, and kind of the good way of doing it this way. So it's kind of a little like Topgolf. They're ready to go, The rest of the development is kind of like, we're gonna get there and we can plan as we go. So the first dome wants to get up, get that support building in and everything else. This preliminary plat, that's gonna be attached to the PUD, gives them some rights to say, hey, we took this to Plan Commission, if we come and get a final plat, as long as it meets this, we'll be good, right? Well, let's say the dome's up and it explodes. We know they're on one lot, we know they can add parking there. There's an extra 11 acres to add, or however many acres to add
I
parking.
guess we really shouldn't say a dome exploding.
Yeah.
Probably
It's not gonna explode, I can promise you that.
Yeah, that's not a good luck thing.
This is a booming.
Yeah.
Then,
And also
so
part
it
of
does
the,
give us an opportunity, those lots 3 and 4, it gives them an opportunity then, if they don't get those lots, they can subdivide the lower lots into smaller ones. So they don't lose outlots, but they can actually add one. There's still, that little notch is unannexed. It most likely would come into the village at some point and also be developed, so that would give them an opportunity as well. So there are, you have to, by code, provide enough parking on site, and if they don't do that, you know, we'll have to go and say, hey, you're gonna have to add some parking here. There's land, there's plenty of space to do so, so.
Yeah. The final plat for phase 1 is
Just
for
a whole-
all of that.
all of that's one
yeah.
lot,
So
so.
yeah, if they need to change the parking a little, they can do that.
So does the plan as it's been proposed here meet the code?
For parking?
Yeah.
So this is where it's actually you guys. So what the code says is we have certain land uses that are clear, and then anything that's not in there, we either staff interprets it as something close to, or if it's something completely unique and unusual, such as a recreational sports dome, it's up to the Plan Commission to determine the amount of parking necessary. But regardless, in our code, it says you have to provide enough parking for your business.
The restaurant and the kinesiologist, that is smaller, but, you know, no details for that. But
well,
we have specific code excerpts for that.
the idea is that generally the kinesiologist or that one end cap, their hours won't conflict with the domes. Generally working more of a 9 to 5 as opposed to, you know, the dome is busy hours, let's say 5 to 10 PM. But we did include the, as much as we could, you know, obviously forecast the parking for the restaurant itself.
We have code requirements for that, we just don't know number of offices, exam rooms, seats, that sort of thing.
Overall, since it's mixed in with everything, it's really up to Plan Commission to determine the final number.
Curious about the hours of operation. Could you repeat what those were?
So I actually saw it on there, it was a little bit different than what, so Monday through Friday, there will be 9 AM people there, but there will be not necessarily, it would mostly be staff. Also, the earlier parts of the day prior to 3 PM would mostly be, say, your college or professional athletes that are having private time, so it won't actually be open to the public, Monday through Friday. 3 PM on from Monday through Friday would be your colleges and or high schools, those sort of things. And then obviously, you know, with the workday and that sort of thing, most of the youth programs will begin at 5 PM and end at 10 PM. So the bulk of the traffic will be from 5 to 10 PM.
Okay, that's very different than what we have on our,
Yes,
I'm gonna revise that,
yes.
I'm making a note right now, so I can get that to Lori on Monday.
yeah, it just seems strange. Because here it is also is indicating that on the weekends it closes
Yeah.
at 1 in the afternoon.
Also, on weekends, it'll be open from 8 AM till 10 PM,
Yeah, that makes more
both
sense.
Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, I don't know. Do commissioners have any other questions or comments?
My sister and brother-in-law are gonna hate you guys,
Why?
because they live right across 191st Street in the condos, and they always brag about how easy it is to get in and out of their place, and that's gonna be gone.
Now there'll be.
But they got a new place to come hit baseball.
There you go. Except they're about 80, I don't think. Let's just not go there.
Good therapy. All right, no one seems to have additional comments. I think there's some excitement here about the event, about the plans, so,
Us too.
very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
public hearing on September 19th.
September 19th, we'll see you guys again.
Okay. And that'll be right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there's no public comment, I think our one public person is back again. Then we could proceed.
You do good of the order, but I don't have anything for you at this
Okay,
time.
so nothing good of the order, so we entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Third, whatever.
fourth.
Okay,
Go home.
I think Commissioner Gaskell made the motion. Commissioner Subsi, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered.
Just say the time.
Okay, and the meeting's officially closed at 8:08.
There you go.
With the gavel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey.
There you go.